I don't really care for a perfect poem. I really like a little bit of mess. Hey, this is L. Williams, and you're watching The Verses. The incoming poetry editor for Indiana Review. I was once the creative nonfiction editor a couple of years ago. Now I'm transitioning to the poetry editor side. Day in life of an editor. Well, you have submissions, also known as slush. So you'll read a lot of slush from the slush pile. You'll also have solicitations if you solicit people, writers. So you'll take the solicitations, send them out. Sometimes you get feedback, sometimes you don't. With the poems or writing that you get back from writers throughout the solicitations, you add that to the slush pile that you bring on from your readers who say, yes, this should go on to the deliberation table. And then you deliberate at the deliberation meetings, which happen not often, but maybe like every other week, switching up the genres. One time, once it's poetry, the next time it's fiction, next time it's creative nonfiction. Different journals have different processes on how they deliberate, how they operate. Some journals have more money than other journals. Some journals are independent. Some journals are connected to MFA programs. The Indiana Review is connected to the MFA program at Indiana University, which means that there's a quick turnover with the editors, which means that the aesthetic is constantly changing, or not changing too much or too drastically, but there's a fluctuation in which my goals for the magazine as poetry editor will be different than the next person's goals, and etc. Or it's different from the last poetry editor's goals. An idea that I will have for a folio will be different for the next editor's idea for a folio. What I'm looking for, I really enjoy vulnerability, innovativeness. I enjoy people who focus on lines, have a love for language, can make me read a poem in a new way, have a newfound sense and joy for language. I really look for an honest poet, a playful poet, a poet that's not afraid just to get dirty and messy. I don't really care for a perfect poem. I really like a little bit of mess. Rejections typically happen when we get to a packet and the first few lines don't really grasp our attention. If there are typos, things that are not done on purpose, like sometimes you have poetic license to do a certain thing, but other times you may have made mistakes and were not careful in putting your packet together. An editor can tell the difference between an artist's intention versus an artist just being sloppy, and not the sloppy I was talking about earlier, but sloppy as in like they didn't proofread. Knowing the masthead, like who are the editors at the magazine, what are the identities that they associate with, like that they have, and it does not mean that you have to fit those identities, but it does mean that you have to know your audience. In a packet, I would like to see 3 to 6. I enjoy a packet that is coming from a larger manuscript, that is cohesive, that has a thread or through line. I want to be able to see a poem on page 1 and see a poem on page 6 that I can tell is going to be in the same collection of poetry. I think that's the best packet for me to read. A packet that says, oh, this person has more writing beyond this, but this is the packet that they chose to send to me for this particular journal because they thought it would be a good fit. The cover letter doesn't have to do too much. If you give information, that's something to give, yes. I read the packet mostly before. I try to read the packet mostly before, because sometimes a cover letter can persuade your perception of the writing. Or if you see like, oh, this packet is written by this person, then you may have a different like perception of the packet poems versus if it's written by someone else. So, yeah. Or sometimes I'll read the cover letter just to see who the person is and try to figure out like what's going on. And so sometimes you'll get editors who are really into publishing a lot of emerging writers or writers who don't have a lot of work out. And then sometimes you'll get writers who are the step beyond emerging. And so it depends on the year. I think that for the years that I've been on Indiana Review, we've had mostly emerging writers. And some established here and there, but it's been majority emerging writers. It's maybe like 90%, 85% from the slush.
As an artist, everything belongs to you. You can write about anything. So what aren't you allowing yourself to write about?